Hey, welcome back to Gideon Stuff, and welcome back to another episode of Edge to Edge. This is a series where we take two knives and we compare them together and see if we have an ultimate winner. Today, we have the battle of the big blue budget blades. The Civivi Praxis versus the Bestech Swordfish. And yes, big blue budget blades was very fun to say. I'm pretty excited about this edge to edge. This was a very, very close fight. And actually, this video has taken me several tries to make. The first two times I tried to make this, I ended up staying up very late after a busy day of classes and chemistry labs, and the videos were completely unintelligible and they will never see the light of day. So let's see if we can do better here. What is edge to edge? In case you're new, this is where we take two knives and we compare them. There's 10 scoreable categories. Each knife gets a point for every category they win in. Ties are possible. At the end, we add them all up and we see if we have an overall winner. So, let's get right into these two awesome knives. So, our first category is the blade. On the Praxis, we see that we have this very wide drop point blade made of 9CR18 MOV. And on the Swordfish, we have a drop point, spear point. It's a lot thinner. This is D2. And both these knives cut very well, but I'm giving the win to the Praxis. This knife, like most Civivis, is ground so thin behind that edge. This is a laser beam, a lightsaber, however you want to say it. And since you have such a tall blade, it gives you really, really powerful cutting performance. So, the Swordfish isn't a slouch when it comes to thinness behind the edge. It's not bad at all. But, I mean, the Praxis really does take the cake in that category. Next up, ergos. The Swordfish, I have no problem with these ergos. They're pretty great. These handles, a little bit contoured. You see they've got some interesting shaping along them. These ergos are just fine. However, the Praxis wins again. There's something about this knife that just locks you into a good grip. You can tell it's not a neutral grip like on the Swordfish, but for me at least, it works very well. Plus, you have this choil up here that you can choke into for some really, really fine detailed work. It's just very hand-filling and pretty darn comfortable. So, the ergos go to the Praxis. Materials. So we already talked about blade steel. We're looking at 9CR18 MOV here on the Praxis and D2 on the Swordfish. G10 scales, G10 backspacers, steel clips, and steel liners. Both of them are running on bearings. For materials, I'm going to go ahead and give them a tie. Personally, I do prefer D2 a little bit over 9CR18 just because of the edge retention. However, 9CR18 is way, way more stainless, and I don't mind 9CR at all. It's a fine steel. It's a good steel, especially at the prices that you're looking at. The G10 on this knife versus this knife, we will talk about a little bit later on, but as far as just materials go, yeah, I'm going to give them both a tie. All right, fit and finish. This was a tough category for me. It really was. But in the end, I'm going to have to give it to the Bestech. This knife, there's something about it that just feels smooth. This G10 is awesome. The Civivi's G10 doesn't really blow my skirts up. This stuff, though, is very, very nice. The whole knife feels very smooth, very finished. The contoured handles are a nice touch. I think the blade looks great. They did one of my favorite things with the clip where they recessed the clip, even though they didn't recess the screws, which if the screws were flat, this would be a perfect clip, but it prevents the clip from getting any wiggle ever. And I don't know, it just feels it feels better than the Praxis. We'll put it that way. It feels more premium. The Praxis isn't bad either. I mean, it has Civivi's fit and finish, and something that I prefer about the Praxis is that it has less hardware, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later. All right, so yeah, fit and finish goes to the Swordfish. Value. I think we're going to give them a tie here. The Praxis comes in at like $42.50, and the Bestech is about $52. And so you do have that $10 price difference, but I do think that you are... I think both these knives are pretty good value. This is a great knife for the price, absolutely. And this knife for the price as well, it does feel like it has some upgraded elements, you know, like the contoured G10, just the overall smoothness. So I'm going to say these guys both tie on the value end of things. All right, action. This is where I might get some angry people in the comment section. This is where I might get a little bit controversial, but I'm going to give the action to the Swordfish. And, you know, yeah, like I said, this might be controversial, but I don't think Civivi is the king of budget actions. They have good actions. This Praxis, it's a perfectly fine action. It's a good action. However, it is very easy for me to fail the Praxis. I can fail the Praxis basically whenever I want. With the Swordfish, it's a lot harder. We'll sit here, no wrist. I'm going to put light pressure on that flipper tab. See. And another thing, speaking of that flipper tab, I don't think Civivi does the best flipper tab sometimes. This flipper tab, it's jimped, which the Bestech is not, which usually I prefer jimping, but we'll talk about that here in a sec. This flipper tab is just kind of ugly and just kind of sticks out there. It's even a little bit sharp and small and uncomfortable. With this flipper tab, you see how this area here, how it kind of curves in to that tab? You've got this nice little whoosh. Well, I can use that little whoosh. It's just, there's something about it. Even though this is a smooth flipper tab, I like it. And when you do push button, the drop shut action's great. Man. Yeah, that thing just gets sucked into the handle. That is... Both actions are very good. With the Civivi, it's very, you know, it's easy to fail it, but, I mean, if you get that flipper tab where it's supposed to be, this knife will deploy 100% of the time. No problem. However, I do think the Swordfish wins out in the action department. Next, Fidget Factor. I'm going to go ahead and give them both a tie here, just because they're both flippers. You know, if one of them had like a Spidey hole or thumb studs or a top front flipper or something, that probably went out. But if you're just sitting around watching TV, playing with your knife, both of these are just about as equally fun. You know, they're flipper knives. There's one way to open it, and then you just close it on both of them. So for Fidget Factor, we'll give them a tie. Carry. Oh, this one was a hard one for me. This one was hard. So I like the clip on the Bestech better. Even though the screws are not recessed, which on the Praxis you have flat screws but non-recessed clip, this clip just seems to slide in and out of my pocket easier. However, the Praxis has a reversible clip for lefties, which I think is pretty good. As far as in the pocket, the Praxis is definitely lighter than the Swordfish, but it's also fatter. The Swordfish is a pretty narrow knife and tucks away in the back of your pocket pretty nicely. You know, I don't know. I'm going to give them a tie for carry. All right, so our next category, that's what I'm looking for. is the construction. This was another one that I went back and forth on a lot. Both these knives are put together just very well, and the Praxis has some great features like minimal hardware, T8s all over the place. But I'm gonna give the win for construction to the Bestech again. You know, I just this knife really does feel like kind of a couple extra couple steps taken, maybe not extra miles, but I really do just love the G10 on these handles. You know, the liners and the G10 match up perfectly, and they match up with the backspacer perfectly. Both these knives came perfectly centered as well. I had no problems with either of these out of the box. I probably could have gone in the fit and finish category, but I don't know. There's something, you know, there. Anyone who's a knife person knows that kind of feeling of you're holding something and you're like, oh, this feels good. This feels very good. And it's something that's not quite tangible. It's not quite something you can just put your finger on. But it's definitely there. It's definitely something that you notice. And the Swordfish gives me more of that kind of feeling than the Praxis does. And again, it's not something that I can readily explain, but as far as construction goes, I really do just love the feel of this guy. Ugh, dirty in there. Try and blow him out a little bit. Do a cleanup after this video. But yeah, I'm gonna give construction to the Swordfish. And that brings us to our final category. This is the X Factor. So, let's talk about it. This is probably the most subjective category, which all of them are subjective, let's be honest. But this one's kind of the most subjective. So, for me personally, the looks of the Swordfish draw me in a lot more. I love the black and blue handle, and then they've also got this with a green, a tan, an orange, maybe a couple other colors. The Praxis you can get in all kinds of different colors, including one that has an OD green handle with a black coated blade, which looks really, really good. But for me personally, the Bestech looks a little sexier. However, the Praxis is a knife that I honestly think everyone should try out. It's kind of it's one of those knives where if someone is, you know, just kind of getting into the knife world and they're saying, well, you know, I want a good budget knife, and you know, I don't want the Civivi Alimentum because it's a little bit too small. I like a bigger knife. I say, oh yeah, get a Praxis. 100% get a Praxis. It's instantly recognizable, has a great reputation, and it's one of the greats in the EDC budget world. And you can't deny that. And that does factor in to the X Factor quite a bit. And so I'm going to give them a tie. Plus, this is another thing that factors in the X Factor for me is names. Praxis and Swordfish. Those are both pretty excellent names. Those are both great, so I appreciate that. But yeah, anyways, a tie in that category. Which brings us to our final score. We have the Praxis with 7 points and the Swordfish with 8. This was a very, very close battle to the death. And honestly, with these two knives, if someone asked me, hey, should I get a Bestech Swordfish or a Civivi Praxis, I'll say, I don't know, take your pick. You know? And if someone else had made this video and put the Praxis as a winner, I would agree 100%. It's a great knife. It is. And these knives are very similar in a lot of ways. And I do kind of consider them to be kind of contemporary to each other. I'm not sure if a lot of other people would think that, but I definitely do. And so, yeah, that's my that's my spill on them. Both of these are fantastic knives. And when it comes to getting them, really, it comes down to aesthetics. Which ones do you prefer? Which one do you prefer the looks of? And honestly, they're budget knives, so most people, if you really, really want to, you could probably have them both. I have these both. These are both part of my permanent collection, so great knives, great knives. Well, that's going to wrap it up here. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Gideon out.